Lucas froze. The folder on the billionaire's screen was open, and the photos inside were devastating. He spun around, expecting to be fired, but Elena Vance was blocking the exit. She wasn't angry. She was trembling. She walked straight up to the poor IT tech and asked the one terrifying question money couldn't answer. If this story resonated with you, click subscribe and let me know in the comments where you're watching from, because tomorrow, Lucas and I will be giving you another story just as crazy as this one. You don't want to miss it. Now let us begin. Lucas Bennett knew the sound of a dying hard drive better than he knew the sound of his own relaxation. It was a rhythmic, metallic clicking, the death rattle of data. He lay on his back under a cramped desk in a mid-level accounting firm, dust bunnies clinging to his worn gray work shirt. Above him, the office manager was tapping his foot impatiently, the polished leather shoe just inches from Lucas's face. "Is it done yet?" the manager snapped. "I have payroll to process. Time is money, Bennett." "Almost," Lucas said, his voice calm, betraying none of the exhaustion that settled deep in his bones. He was 32, but some days he felt 50. He slid out from under the desk, sweat sticking his dark hair to his forehead, and plugged the final cable into the port. The screen flickered to life. "You're back online?" Lucas said, standing up. He wiped his hands on a rag from his back pocket. He was a handsome man, with the kind of rugged, authentic features that usually turned heads. Strong jaw, kind eyes, broad shoulders built from years of manual labor. But in places like this, he was invisible. He was just the help. The manager didn't say thank you. He just grunted and tossed a check on the desk. "Don't let the door hit you." Lucas took the check. It was for $200. He did the mental math as he walked to the elevator. 70 for gas, 50 for groceries. That leaves 80 for Lily's field trip fee. He broke even. Again. He stepped out into the humid city air and climbed into his van. It was a beat-up Ford, rattling with the ghosts of 1,000 miles, but the passenger seat was pristine. That was where his 6-year-old daughter, Lily, sat. A pink car seat, a stuffed rabbit named Buster wedged in the cup holder. She was the only reason he swallowed his pride 10 times a day. His phone buzzed. It was dispatch. "Lucas, you busy?" "Just finished up. I was heading to pick up Lily." "I need a miracle. We just got a code red from Vance Enterprises. The tower." Lucas stiffened. Vance Enterprises wasn't a client. They were a kingdom. They owned half the skyline. "I thought they had an in-house team." "They do, but the CEO, Elena Vance, fired them all this morning in a rage. Her personal laptop bricked, and she doesn't trust anyone on the payroll. She wants an independent contractor, and she wants the best. That's you." "The rate?" "Triple emergency pay." Lucas looked at the stuffed rabbit. Triple pay meant new shoes for Lily. It meant breathing room. "I'm on my way." The Vance Tower was a monolith of glass and steel that pierced the clouds. Lucas felt the shift in atmosphere the moment he stepped into the lobby. The air was colder, smelling of expensive lilies and ozone. Men in suits that cost more than Lucas's van scurried around with terrified looks in their eyes. Everyone knew the rumors about Elena Vance, the Ice Queen. A prodigy who took over her father's empire at 25 and doubled its value by 28. She was ruthless, brilliant, and allegedly completely heartless. Security scanned Lucas like he was a bomb threat before escorting him to the private elevator. The ride to the penthouse took a full minute. When the doors opened, Lucas stepped into a cavernous office with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the entire city. It was breathtaking, but stark. White marble floors, black leather furniture, zero clutter, no photos, no warmth. And there, behind a desk that looked like a fortress, stood Elena Vance. She was pacing, her back to him. She wore a tailored black power suit that hugged an hourglass figure most magazines would kill for. her long dark hair cascading down her back like a silk curtain. She was shouting into a headset. "I don't care about the board's feelings, Marcus. I care that I have a presentation in Tokyo in 2 hours, and my laptop is a paperweight. Fix it, or I'm gutting your department next." She ripped the headset off and threw it on the couch. She turned, and for a second, Lucas forgot how to breathe. She was devastatingly beautiful. High cheekbones, full lips painted a severe crimson, and eyes that were the color of storm clouds. But her expression was one of pure, unadulterated stress. She scanned Lucas, her gaze lingering for a split second on his worn boots and the tool bag slung over his shoulder. She didn't see a man. She saw a tool. "You're the independent?" she asked. Her voice was sharp, accustomed to command. "Lucas Bennett," he said, stepping forward. "I heard you have a boot loop error?" "I don't know what I have," she snapped, gesturing to a sleek, silver laptop on her desk. "I have the merger of the century on that drive, and the screen is black. My IT lead said it was a hardware failure. I fired him for incompetence. You have 20 minutes. "And if I can't fix it?" Lucas asked, setting his bag down. Elena leaned against the edge of her desk, crossing her arms. The movement highlighted the terrifying perfection of her silhouette. She looked him dead in the eye. "Then you can join the others in the unemployment line. Don't waste my time, Mr. Bennett." Lucas didn't flinch. He dealt with angry landlords, broken engines, and a broken heart. A billionaire with a deadline didn't scare him. "I'll need silence," Lucas said softly, sitting in her $5,000 chair. Elena blinked, surprised by his tone. He wasn't cowering. "Excuse me?" "Silence," Lucas repeated, looking up at her. His eyes were calm, anchoring the chaotic energy in the room. For the first time in years, Elena Vance didn't have a retort. She just nodded and stepped back and watched him work. Lucas is used to being invisible to the people he serves. Have you ever felt like people only value you for what you can do for them, rather than who you are? The silence in the penthouse was heavier than the noise of the street below. Lucas worked with the precision of a surgeon, his fingers flying across the external keyboard he'd hooked up to her laptop. Elena had stopped pacing. She was standing by the window, her back to him, staring out at the city she practically owned. Her reflection in the glass looked ghostly, a warrior queen watching her kingdom, yet utterly alone. "We're close," Lucas murmured, breaking the quiet. "Close isn't done," she replied, though her voice lacked its earlier bite. She sounded tired. "If that merger file isn't recovered, the Japanese investors walk, and if they walk, the board eats me alive." "It's not hardware," Lucas said, his eyes glued to the scrolling code. "It's a corruption in the user profile. Your previous IT guy tried to patch it and created a loop. I'm bypassing the boot sequence to pull the raw data first." He hit enter. The screen flashed black, then blue. A spinning wheel appeared. Then, with a cheerful chiming sound, the desktop loaded. "Got it," Lucas exhaled, wiping sweat from his brow. Elena turned, her eyes widening. You did it." "Files are restoring now. It'll just take a—" Suddenly, the screen flickered. Because of the forced restore, the operating system was reopening every window that had been active when the crash happened. Spreadsheets popped up, emails, the merger presentation, and then a folder named Truth opened dead center on the screen. It wasn't business. Lucas froze. He tried to look away, his instinct for privacy kicking in, but the images were large, high resolution, and impossible to miss. They were selfies, but not the curated, airbrushed perfection Elena Vance posted on magazine covers. In one, she was curled up on a bathroom floor, hugging her knees, her mascara running in black streaks down a tear-stained face. In another,
She was staring into a mirror with no makeup, pulling at her skin, looking at herself with an expression of pure self-loathing. The last one was the most haunting. She was holding a birthday cupcake with a single candle, sitting alone in this very office, forcing a smile that looked like it was breaking her face. It was a gallery of loneliness, a documentation of a woman screaming for help in an empty room. "Mr. Bennett?" The voice was barely a whisper. Lucas's hand hovered over the mouse. He looked up. Elena was standing right beside the desk. She wasn't looking at the screen. She was looking at him. Her face had drained of color. The imperious CEO was gone. In her place was the woman from the photos, exposed, terrified, and stripped of her armor. Lucas immediately minimized the window. I apologize. The restore script reopens active sessions. Don't." She cut him off. Her voice trembled. The air in the room shifted. It became suffocatingly intimate. A stranger, a hired hand, had just seen the billionaire's naked soul. Lucas expected her to scream, to fire him, to call security and have him thrown out for invading her privacy. He stood up, instinctively retreating to give her space. I didn't see anything, Miss Vance. The data is safe. I'll pack up and go." "Wait." She stepped closer. Her scent of expensive perfume, jasmine, and cold rain filled his senses. She looked down at the black screen where the images were now hidden, then up at Lucas's kind brown eyes. She was searching for judgment. She found none. Her lower lip quivered. She wrapped herself around herself, trying to hold the pieces together. "You saw them," she stated. It wasn't a question. "I saw a folder," Lucas said gently. "Nothing else." "You saw me," she corrected. She took a shaky breath, her composure hanging by a thread. The silence stretched for 10 seconds, thick and painful. Then she asked the question that made the world stop spinning. "Are you pretty?" Lucas blinked, caught off guard. "What?" Elena stepped into his personal space. Her eyes were wet, desperate, pleading for a truth she couldn't buy. Without the lighting, without the power suit, without the billions of dollars that make everyone pretend to like me, her voice cracked, raw and painful. "When you saw me broken, was I still pretty? Or am I just rich?" She looked at him with such intense vulnerability that it felt like a physical weight. She was handing him a weapon, her insecurity, and waiting to see if he would use it to hurt her. Lucas looked at this powerful woman who could buy his entire neighborhood and realized she was poorer than he was. He had Lily's love. She had nothing but mirrors and money. He knew he had to answer carefully, not as an employee, but as a man.
The question hung in the air like smoke. Am I pretty? Lucas looked at Elena. Standing there, stripping herself of every defense she had, she looked like she was waiting for a verdict that would either save her or destroy her. He could have lied. He could have given her the generic compliment she probably heard from sycophants every day. Yes, you're gorgeous. Yes, you're perfect. But Lucas Bennett was a man who fixed broken things for a living, and he knew you couldn't fix a crack by painting over it. "You want the truth?" Lucas asked softly. Elena nodded, her knuckles white as she gripped her own arms. "In those photos," Lucas paused, searching for the right words, "you didn't look rich, and you didn't look powerful." Elena flinched, as if he'd slapped her. She started to turn away, humiliation rising in her throat. "I see. You can go." "You looked real," Lucas finished, his voice firm. She froze. "You asked if you were pretty," Lucas continued, stepping closer, though he respected the invisible line between them. Miss Vance, you are one of the most beautiful women I have ever seen. But in those photos, you looked lonely, and that made you look human. Elena stared at him. Her mouth opened slightly, but no sound came out. She was prepared for flattery. She was prepared for mockery. She was not prepared for vision. He had seen past the facade she spent millions constructing. For a moment, the air between them crackled with something electric, a connection that terrified her. Then the fear took over. The vulnerability was too much. The walls slammed back up. Elena Vance, the CEO, re-entered the room. Her posture straightened. The softness in her eyes hardened into glass. She marched around the desk, putting the massive mahogany barrier between them. She opened a drawer and pulled out a checkbook. "I'm doubling your fee," she said. Her voice clipped and cold. She refused to look at him now. She scribbled furiously. "And I'm adding $5,000 for a non-disclosure agreement. You never saw those files. We never had this conversation. Do you understand?" The sound of the pen scratching against the paper was aggressive. She ripped the check out and slid it across the polished surface. "Take it and get out." Lucas looked at the check. It was more money than he made in 3 months. It could pay off his credit card. It could buy Lily a new bed. But it felt dirty. It was a bribe to forget she was human. Lucas reached out and took the check. He picked up a pen from her desk. "What are you doing?" Elena demanded. Lucas crossed out the amount. He wrote a new number above it, the exact amount for the emergency service call. Not a penny more. "I did a job," Lucas said, sliding the check back to her. "I expect to be paid for my work, but my silence—" He picked up his tool bag and slung it over his shoulder. "That's free. I don't sell my decency, Miss Vance, and I don't kick people when they're down." Elena looked at the altered check, stunned. Her hand hovered over it. No one had ever refused her money before. It was the only language she knew how to speak. "Why?" she whispered, confused. Lucas paused at the elevator doors. He looked back at her, a small figure in a giant, empty tower. "Because everyone gets lonely, Elena. Even people in castles." The elevator doors slid shut, cutting off her view of him. Lucas leaned his head against the cool metal of the elevator wall as he descended 50 floors. His heart was hammering. He had just walked away from $5 grand. He was an idiot. A proud, broke idiot. But as he walked out to his van and saw Buster the rabbit in the passenger seat, he knew he'd done the right thing. He kept his dignity. Back in the penthouse, Elena Vance stood frozen. She picked up the check. She traced the lines where he had crossed out her money. She looked at the empty chair where he had sat. For the first time in years, the silence in her office didn't feel peaceful. It felt deafening.
3 days later, Elena Vance sat at the head of a 20-foot mahogany table, surrounded by 12 men in gray suits. They were discussing quarterly projections, synergy, and market caps. Usually, Elena thrived on this. She was the conductor of this orchestra. But today, the voices sounded like static. All she could see was the memory of a man in a faded work shirt standing by the elevator, refusing $5,000. "Everyone gets lonely, Elena." He had seen her. He was the only person in 10 years who hadn't looked at her and seen a walking ATM or a boss to be feared. He saw the girl in the photos. "Ms. Vance, your thoughts on the acquisition?" Elena blinked. The board was staring at her. "It's fine," she said dismissively. "Authorize it." She stood up abruptly. "Meeting adjourned. I have a technical issue to resolve." She walked out, leaving 12 confused millionaires in her wake. Back in her office, she stared at her perfectly functioning laptop. It was fast, efficient, and cold. She hated it. She picked up her phone and dialed the external IT dispatch. "This is Elena Vance. I need Lucas Bennett back at the tower, immediately." "Is the system down again, ma'am?" "Yes," she lied smoothly. "It's glitching. Intermittently. Send him now." When Lucas arrived an hour later, he looked wary. He had his tool bag gripped tight, his knuckles white. He expected to be fired or sued or yelled at. He stepped into the office. "Ms. Vance, dispatch said it was an emergency." Elena was sitting on the couch, not behind her desk. She was reading a document or pretending to. "It is. The Wi-Fi keeps dropping. I can't work like this." Lucas frowned. He pulled out his diagnostic tablet and walked around the room, scanning the signal. "Signal strength is 100%, he said, confused. "Packet loss is 0. You have a dedicated fiber line, Ms. Vance. It's physically impossible for you to have a bad connection." He looked at her. She didn't look up from her papers. "Well, it feels slow," she said stubbornly. "I need you to stay and monitor it, in real time, just in case it drops." Lucas lowered the tablet. He wasn't stupid. He looked at the woman who ran a billion-dollar empire, currently pouting like a child who didn't want to be left alone at recess. He realized then, she's not having a technical problem. She's having a human problem. He could have called her bluff. He could have left, but he remembered the photos. "All right," Lucas said, his voice dropping an octave. "Softer now. I'll run a continuous diagnostic. But it'll take a few hours." "Bill me for the day," she said quickly, too quickly. He set up his gear on the coffee table opposite her. For 20 minutes, the only sound was the hum of the server and the scratching of her pen. It was a forced proximity, a cage of her own making, but the tension began to dissolve into something else. "You mentioned a daughter," Elena said suddenly. She didn't look up. Lucas paused typing. "I did?" "When you were talking to dispatch the other day, you said you had to pick up Lily." Lucas smiled, a genuine, reflex smile that lit up his tired face. "Yeah, Lily. She's 6. She's the boss. I just work for her." Elena looked up then. She saw the way his eyes softened. She felt a pang of jealousy so sharp it almost hurt. She wanted someone to look at her like that, just once. "Is she like you?" Elena asked. "She's smarter than me," Lucas laughed. "And she's got her mother's stubbornness." "Where is her mother?" The question slipped out before Elena could stop it. It was intrusive. It was personal. It was a breach of the employee-employer line. Lucas's smile faded. The air in the room grew heavy again, but not with tension, but with sorrow. "She's gone," Lucas said simply. He didn't elaborate. He didn't need to. The pain in his voice filled the silence. Elena closed her file. She moved from the defensive position on the couch to the floor, sitting on the plush rug near his equipment. She was lowering herself to his level. "I'm sorry," she whispered. "It was a long time ago," Lucas said, though his eyes said it felt like yesterday. He looked at Elena, really looked at her. "Money can fix computers, Ms. Vance. It can't fix everything." "I know," she said, her voice small. "I'm learning that." The sun began to dip below the horizon, painting the office in hues of bruised purple and gold. The glitch Lucas was monitoring still hadn't appeared, but neither of them mentioned it. Elena was still sitting on the floor, her legs tucked under her expensive skirt. She traced the pattern on the rug with a manicured finger. "I didn't take those photos for me," she said suddenly. Her voice was quiet, barely audible over the hum of the air conditioning. Lucas stopped typing. He turned his chair to face her completely. "You don't have to explain." "I do," she insisted. She looked up, her eyes dry but bright with suppressed emotion. "I signed up for a dating app. A normal one. Not the exclusive leagues my publicist tries to force on me." She let out a dry, humorless laugh. "I used a fake name. Sarah. I listed my job as a librarian. I wanted to see if anyone would want me. Just me. Not the portfolio, not the CEO." Lucas watched her, captivated by the raw honesty spilling out of her. And I couldn't find a photo. Every picture I have is professional, staged, retouched. I looked at my camera roll and realized I didn't exist. Elena Vance, the brand, existed, but the woman, she was missing. She hugged her knees tighter. "I took those selfies without the makeup to see if Sarah could be loved." She looked at Lucas, her expression crumbling. "I couldn't post them. I looked at them and saw a fraud. I felt so ugly." Lucas felt a lump form in his throat. He saw the tragedy of her life clearly now. She was a prisoner in a golden tower. "You're not a fraud, Elena," Lucas said gentle. "You're just hidden." "And you?" she asked, deflecting the attention. "You said your wife is gone. You didn't say she died." Lucas looked down at his hands, hands that were rough, scarred, and stained with faint traces of grease. "She didn't die," Lucas admitted. The words tasted like ash. She left. Elena stayed silent, waiting. "She wanted this." Lucas gestured around the opulent office. "Not the work, the life. She wanted trips to Bali and designer bags and a husband who wore suits, not coveralls. I was pulling double shifts, coming home exhausted, trying to build a future, but it wasn't fast enough for her." He looked at Elena, his eyes full of a quiet, resolved pain. "She met a guy, a developer, real estate. He had a Porsche and a condo downtown. One day I came home and half the closet was empty. She left a note saying she deserved better." Elena flinched. The irony hit her like a physical blow. "She left you for money?" Elena asked, incredulous. She looked at Lucas, his kindness, his patience, the way he spoke about his daughter. "She traded you for a bank account?" "She traded a struggle for stability," Lucas corrected, refusing to be bitter. "I get it. Being poor is hard. It wears you down. Being rich is hard too. It just wears you down differently. It makes you wonder if anyone is staying for you." They looked at each other across the gap of the coffee table. The distance between their worlds, the billions of dollars, suddenly felt irrelevant. They were just two people scarred by the same currency, one who had too little and one who had too much. "She was a fool," Elena said, her voice fierce. "Maybe she was, but she gave me Lily, so I can't hate her." Elena looked at him, and for the first time she didn't just see a handsome man, she saw a man of immense character, a man who had every reason to be angry at the world, yet chose to be kind. "I think Sarah would have liked you," Elena murmured. "I think I would have liked Sarah, too." The air in the room changed. It wasn't just understanding anymore. It was attraction, deep, terrifying, and real. "I'm starving," Elena announced, breaking the heavy silence that followed their confessions. "I usually have a macronutrient-balanced salad delivered at 6, but I sent my assistant home." Lucas checked his watch. It was nearly 9. "Salad won't cut it. You need real food." He pulled out his phone. 30 minutes later, a delivery guy in a windbreaker was confusedly being escorted up the private elevator by a security guard.
Lucas took the boxes and set them down, right in the center of the pristine, polished mahogany desk that had intimidated seasoned investors. "Pepperoni and jalapeno," Lucas declared, flipping the lid open. Steam curled up, smelling of grease, spice, and comfort. "The heartburn special. It's a classic." Elena stared at the box. It looked like an alien object in her sterile office. She looked at Lucas, who had already grabbed a slice, a string of cheese connecting it to the box. "I haven't eaten pizza in 3 years," she admitted, picking up a slice gingerly with 2 fingers. "That," Lucas said, shaking his head, "is a tragedy greater than the boot loop error." She took a bite, then another, and suddenly the Ice Queen was gone. They sat on the edge of the desk, feet dangling, ties loosened, heels kicked off. They ate and talked about everything except business. Lucas told her about Lily's obsession with dinosaurs. Elena told him about her secret love for trashy reality TV shows. "No way!" Lucas laughed, wiping his hands on a napkin. "You, the financial genius? You watch Real Housewives?" "It's mindless," Elena defended herself, giggling. And then she snorted, a loud, ungraceful snort. She froze, horrified, covering her mouth. "Oh, God, I'm sorry. That was perfect," Lucas said softly. The laughter died down. The office was dark now, lit only by the glittering skyline of the city below. The atmosphere shifted from camaraderie to something heavier, warmer. Elena looked at Lucas. He was leaning back on his hands, looking at her with an intensity that made her skin prickle. In the dim light, the difference in their bank accounts disappeared. There was just the curve of her neck, the strength of his forearms, the way the air seemed to thin between them. "You're good for me, Lucas," Elena whispered. The admission terrified her. "I'm just the IT guy," Lucas deflected, though his voice was rough. "Stop saying that," she commanded softly. She leaned in. Her eyes searched his, dropping to his lips. "You're the only person who hasn't asked me for a thing." She was close. So close, he could count the eyelashes framing those storm cloud eyes. Her scent, jasmine and rain, overwhelmed him. Lucas felt the magnetic pull to lean forward, to bridge the gap, to taste the life he could never afford. For a heartbeat, he almost did. He leaned in, his breath hitching. But then, his eyes caught the reflection in the window. He saw them, the billionaire in silk and the technician in denim. He saw the reality that would crash down the moment the kiss ended. He saw the tabloids. He saw the inevitable heartbreak when she realized he couldn't fit in her world. Lucas pulled back, physically, emotionally. He hopped off the desk, grabbing the empty pizza box. "It's late. I should get back. Lily's babysitter charges overtime." Elena stayed frozen on the desk, rejected. The vulnerability on her face curdled into shame. She had offered herself, and he had retreated. "Right," she said, her voice turning brittle again. She smoothed her skirt, the mask sliding back into place. "Send me the invoice." "Good night, Miss Vance." Lucas didn't look back as he walked to the elevator, afraid that if he did, he would run back to her and ruin them both.
The next morning, Lucas woke up feeling a strange mix of regret and longing. He made Lily pancakes, trying to shake the memory of Elena's eyes in the dim office light. He was just pouring syrup when his phone buzzed. It was a notification from a news app. A headline screamed in bold, red letters. "The cracks in the crown. Sources claim CEO Elena Vance is unstable and on the verge of collapse." Lucas's stomach dropped. He clicked the link. The article didn't publish the photos, thank God, but it described them in vivid detail. It mentioned her crying on the floor. It mentioned her desperate need for validation. It painted her as a weak,
fragile liability to her shareholders. Anonymous source. Lucas grabbed his keys. He had to get to her. He had to explain he didn't do this. But when he arrived at Vance Tower, the security codes didn't work. 2 guards, men who looked like linebackers, stepped in front of him. "Ms. Vance wants to see you," one grunted. "Now." They escorted him up, not like a guest, but like a prisoner. When the elevator doors opened, the office was in chaos. Lawyers were shouting. PR crisis teams were typing furiously. Elena stood in the center of the storm, holding a tablet like a weapon. When she saw Lucas, the room went silent. She gestured for everyone to leave. The lawyers filed out, casting suspicious glares at Lucas. "Elena," Lucas started, stepping forward. "I saw the news. I swear to you—" "Stop," she cut him off. Her voice was ice, cold, sharp, and deadly. "Just stop." She walked toward him, her eyes red-rimmed but dry. The vulnerability from last night was gone, replaced by a defensive rage that terrified him. "I trusted you," she hissed. "I let you in. I let you see me. And you cashed out." "I didn't," Lucas said, his voice shaking with the injustice of it. "I didn't say a word to anyone. You have to believe me." "Don't I?" She laughed, a cruel, bitter sound. "You're a struggling single dad, Lucas. You drive a van that's falling apart. You fix computers for scraps. Why wouldn't you sell me out? How much did TMZ pay you? 50,000? 100? "It's not about the money," Lucas shouted, his calm demeanor finally cracking. "It is always about the money," Elena screamed back, slamming her hand on the desk, the same desk where they had shared pizza hours ago. "I was stupid to think you were different. I was stupid to think you actually—" She choked on the words. "You're just like the rest of them. You're a grifter." The word hung in the air. Grifter. Lucas went still. He looked at the woman he had almost kissed. He saw the fear behind her eyes. She was lashing out because she was terrified. But her words had drawn blood. She had attacked the only thing he had left. His name. He didn't yell. He didn't fight back. He straightened his spine. "I have $200 in my bank account right now, and I would rather starve than take a dime for betraying someone's trust." He reached into his pocket, pulled out the security badge she had given him, and set it gently on the desk. "You're not mad because I sold you out, Elena. You're mad because I saw you, and that scares you more than any headline." He turned and walked away. "Lucas!" she shouted after him. "If you walk out, don't you dare come back! You're fired! You hear me? You're nothing!" Lucas kept walking. The elevator doors closed on her shouting face, sealing her in her tower of gold and silence. As he walked out of the building, into the gray drizzle of the city, Lucas felt a heavy weight in his chest. He had kept his integrity, but he had lost the girl. And for the first time in a long time, he felt truly poor. Lucas walked away to protect his dignity even when he was falsely accused. Have you ever had to walk away from someone you cared about because they didn't trust you? How did you handle it? Let me know in the comments.
The storm outside had passed, leaving the city washed clean and gray, but the storm inside Vance Tower was still raging. Elena sat in the center of her office floor, not on the chair, not on the couch, but on the rug where she and Lucas had talked about Sarah. The room was littered with legal briefs and PR strategy documents, but she hadn't looked at them in hours. She kept replaying the look on Lucas's face, the quiet dignity, the way he set the badge down like it was a heavy weight. Grifter. The word tasted like bile in her mouth. The intercom buzzed. "Ms. Vance, head of security is here." "Send him in," Elena whispered. The doors opened. Her security chief, a man named Graves, who rarely showed emotion, walked in, holding a small, clear plastic bag. Inside was a tiny black chip, no bigger than a fingernail. "We found the source," Graves said, placing the bag on the desk. Elena stood up, her legs stiff. "It was Bennett? Did you track the wire transfer?" "No, ma'am. It wasn't Bennett." Elena felt the blood drain from her face. "What?" "We swept the office again," Graves explained. "We found this bug planted under the conference table. It's been transmitting audio for a week. It's a high-end corporate espionage device." "Who?" Elena demanded, though her heart was already sinking. "Marcus from the board. He's been leaking stories to tank the stock price so he could trigger a buyout clause. We have him on tape bragging about it." Elena stared at the tiny black chip. It wasn't the IT guy. It wasn't the man struggling to pay rent. It was the man in the $5,000 suit, the man she had known for 10 years. "And Lucas?" Elena asked, her voice trembling. "Did you check his accounts?" Graves looked at his tablet, hesitating. "We did a full financial forensic sweep as you ordered. Ms. Vance, the guy is clean. In fact, what?" "He's overdrawn. His account went into the negative this morning, probably when he bought gas to come here. He didn't sell anything. He walked out of here broke." Elena squeezed her eyes shut. A tear leaked out, hot and shameful. She had accused the only honest man in her life of being a thief purely because he was poor. She had projected all her trauma, all her cynicism, onto the one person who had tried to see her humanity. "I ruined it," she whispered to the empty room. Across the city, in a small apartment that smelled of cinnamon toast and old books, Lucas sat on the edge of his daughter's bed. Lily was tucking Buster the rabbit into his shoebox bed. She looked up at her dad with big, curious eyes. "And are you going back to the Princess Tower tomorrow?" she asked. Lucas looked at his hands. He thought about the triple pay he had lost. He thought about the rent due in 3 days. He felt the crushing weight of the world on his shoulders. But when he looked at Lily, he forced a smile. "No, Bug," he said gently, brushing hair out of her face. "The job is done." "Did you fix it?" Lily asked. Lucas thought about Elena, the woman hiding behind the glass, the woman who was so rich, yet so incredibly poor in spirit. "I tried, Lily," Lucas said softly, "but some things take more than tools to fix." He kissed her forehead and turned off the light. He walked into his tiny living room and sat in the dark. He had his pride, he had his daughter, but as he looked at his phone, willing it not to ring and terrified that it might, he admitted the truth to himself. He missed her.
The knock on the door was hesitant. It wasn't the heavy pound of the landlord coming for rent. It was a soft, rhythmic rapping. Lucas looked at the clock. 10:30 p.m. He rubbed his face, exhausted, and walked to the door. He unlocked the deadbolt and pulled it open, prepared to tell a neighbor to turn their music down. He stopped. Standing in the dim, flickering hallway of his tenement building was Elena Vance. She looked completely out of place, like a diamond dropped in a gutter, but she wasn't wearing her armor. Her hair was pulled back in a messy bun. She wasn't wearing the severe black blazer. She was just in a silk blouse, her arms crossed against the chill of the drafty hallway. There were no bodyguards, no limo driver waiting on the stairs. Just her. "I didn't steal the data," Lucas said, his voice flat. He made to close the door. "I know," Elena said quickly, putting a hand out to stop the wood. "I know it wasn't you. It was Marcus. My security team found the bug." Lucas paused. He looked at her hand on his door, her manicured fingers trembling slightly. He opened the door wider, but he didn't step back to let her in. "So you came to give me my job back?"
offer me another check?" "No," Elena said. She reached into her purse. Lucas tensed, half expecting a legal document. Instead, she pulled out a brightly colored, hardcover book, the Encyclopedia of Prehistoric Dinosaurs. "You said Lily likes dinosaurs," Elena said, whispered. "I stopped at the bookstore before they closed. I didn't know which one she had, so I got the biggest one." Lucas looked from the book to Elena's face. Her eyes were pleading. This wasn't a CEO managing a crisis. This was a woman trying to build a bridge across a canyon she had created. "I don't want the job, Lucas," she continued, her voice cracking. "And I don't want to offer you money. I want to offer you an apology." She took a step closer, entering his space, entering his world. "I have $3 billion. And today, when I thought I lost you, I realized I didn't have a single thing that mattered. I called you a grifter because I was jealous. Because you have nothing, yet you have so much more than me. You have integrity. You have love." She looked down at her shoes. "I'm just a lonely girl in a glass tower, Lucas. And I'm tired of being up there alone." Lucas looked at the woman who had terrified half the city, standing in his hallway, begging for a chance to be real. The anger in his chest evaporated, replaced by the warmth he had felt that night over pizza. He took the book from her hands and set it on the small entry table. Then he took her hands in his. "You're not alone anymore," he said softly. Elena looked up, hope flooding her expression. She searched his face, needing to hear it one last time. She whispered the echo of the words that had started it all. "Am I pretty, Lucas?" Lucas smiled, not a polite smile, but a deep, loving grin that reached his eyes. He reached up and brushed a stray lock of hair behind her ear. "You're beautiful," he answered. "But the best part? You finally look real." Elena let out a sob of relief and threw her arms around his neck. He caught her, pulling her close, burying his face in the scent of jasmine and rain. He kissed her, not tentatively this time, but with the confidence of a man who knew exactly what he was worth. It was a kiss that tasted of second chances and broken barriers. When they finally pulled apart, Elena rested her forehead against his. "Tomorrow, I'm firing the board," she whispered. "Good, because I know a guy who's looking for work, but he's expensive." "How expensive?" she teased, smiling through her tears. "Pizza. And maybe a date with the librarian named Sarah?" "Deal." Lucas pulled her inside and closed the door, shutting out the cold, the city, and the noise. For the first time in his life, Lucas Bennett wasn't just surviving. He was home. Lucas and Elena found love by stripping away their masks and being vulnerable. Do you think true love is possible if you can't show your real self? Why or why not? Let me know in the comments below. And don't forget to subscribe for more stories like this. The end. Thank you for watching another story of Lucas Bennett to the end. If you enjoyed this story, you will surely love the next one. It's as wild and more intriguing as you can ever imagine. So subscribe. Lucas and I will be waiting for you tomorrow.